Good morning and welcome to this virtual all-fashion sourcing panel discussion on the state of the African textile and leather goods industries. I'm Neil Piper, the head of content for Messi Frankfurt, South Africa, and it gives me great pleasure to welcome our esteemed panelists and the panel host for today's session, Michael Lawrence. Michael is the Executive Director of the National Clothing Retail Federation, board member of Proudly South African, Consumer Goods and Services Ombud. Thank you, Michael, and thank you very, very much for taking the time to host this very important panel discussion. I'll hand over to you now for you to introduce your panel and to host the session. Thank you, Michael. Over to you.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Neil. Appreciate those introductory remarks, and thank you for putting us all together to discuss what is really quite an important conversation. The reality of global value chains is the conversation of the day, but it seems to be unpacking even further as we look at continental and regional value chains. And so we've got a few experts gathered here who know an immense amount about clothing, textile, footwear, leather, who know an immense amount about how to move goods, about how to strategically define where goods come from and where they should be moving, and how to optimize the economic benefits for all the participants in those value chains, whether, as I said, they are global or regional or as we often going to be talking about, continental. We really have quite a bunch of great experts. We've got Vishnu Munian, who is a professional in the shipping industry, 20 years there. He's got great expertise in particular in South African customs legislation, and of course the legal framework of what we're doing and why we're doing across the continent is incredibly important. The trade agreements themselves are legal frameworks which need to be carefully considered and again, as I kept saying, optimized. Etienne Flock is the National Industrial Policy Officer of SACTU, the South African Clothing and Textile Workers Union. Etienne has been a researcher in his younger days, but he is particularly focused on interventions in manufacturing and agro-processing, with a special interest and involvement as we have come to know him in the clothing and textile, footwear and leather arena. Narisha Jairaj, who is the Executive Director of the SAFLEC, South African Footwear and Leather Council, has been a champion of how to make goods that are export ready and how not just to get them export ready, but to get them exported into viable markets. And Narisha is going to be speaking to us, I'm sure, about her expertise in there. And then we've got Girish Wansingh, who is the head of Department of Manufacturing at the Economic Development Board. He's got a great expertise in strategic management and international marketing, more than 20 years experience in that. So there's an immense amount of technical experience, academic experience, practical experience that is gathered around the table at the moment. I'm going to ask Vishnu to be brave enough to make some opening remarks, please, from his side and his experience and understanding. And I've asked the panel, as they just think through the processes, where are the opportunities? Where are the challenges? But most especially, where are the opportunities? I think it would be great if what we do here is look at not just the low-hanging fruit, but where exactly it is that we can start giving traction to what should be a very viable continental value chain and at least regional value chain when we look at clothing, textile, footwear and leather, but the textile arena in particular. Vishnu, over to you.
Thank you very much, Michael. I represent the logistics sector, specifically the clearing and forwarding business. And our business is to facilitate import and export clearing. The master plan, basically under the commitments, required SARS to stem the flow of illegal imports. And I guess the formation of the specialized units within SARS on a national basis to deal with the undervaluation of imports has seen clearing agents take strain if they are facilitating the clearing of these imports. Now, over the years, there have been teams set up, but I think the most concerted effort to set up a strategic and highly skilled team has been made after the plan. And I think what this has actually done is it's made it difficult for people that want to continue importing illegally. So as a responsible clearing agent, we are in a position to decline our services to unscrupulous sort of importers. And you'd find as a result of that, these sort of importers are confined to a certain group of clearing agents as well. I think over time as well, clients that used to import and now manufacture locally, this was basically, I think, as a result of the retailers' commitments towards the plan as well. And most importers that were previously manufacturers, so it's easy for them to revert from being importers back to manufacturers as well. And I think that the value chain transformation commitments in the plan are definitely being adhered to. I've spoken to people that are in the industry, and the supply to retailers was from my perspective, basically an untransformed supply. And clearly there is commitment from retailers to adhere to this. And the change has definitely stimulated local manufacturing.
Vishnu, thank you. Girish, can I come over to you and just ask you to just share your experience of the sector, and in particular the movement of textiles both in and out of the continent. What is happening as you see it from that very privileged position of yours?
Thank you, Michael. Yes, when we talk about this regional aspect, regional trade, distribute this more intra-trade within the region, this is something that we really hold at heart when it comes to Mauritius. Mauritius being a small island development state, but the reality also that despite being small, we have been doing textile and apparel for the last 50 years now. A country with no big market and has been exporting more or less to Europe and then later on to USA. But from the perspective of intra-trade, that's something that we believe need to be strengthened. And in fact, for us as a country that does not have raw materials, the basic principle in which we are adhering to is that principle to develop to this concept of made through Africa. We would have wished to see that that different exchange would lead to that. It's a matter of concern that despite efforts, despite a lot of talking that I do, to walk the talk seems to be a bit difficult. And if I go to latest statistic, forget Europe, where they have 60% intra-trade, but the Asia Pacific itself, 70%. If you go to the NAFTA, it's 33%. While we in Africa, it's only 12%. So it implies in that particular context, the different exchange that due to happens, okay, with falling of boundaries, if I can put it like that, is not happening at the same pace that we have wished it to happen. The different canal of communications is not there. The channels to do the exchange of trade is not there. And this also in the context, in the world of fashion, if I can put it like that, we have the necessary expertise in that region. We have the necessary experts to do from the design, the transformation and all. We have the fertile land to grow the cotton. Okay, we are growing already in so many places. Okay, but there is this particular dynamism has not yet been in. And this also in a particular context, okay? We must also take into consideration in our vision that should go as far as possible the different umbrella under which we operate. You know, already there's a difference. The single transformation within the COMESA, which is more flexible for countries like us. The double transformations that will be required by SADC, you know, implying, you know, already we have the difficulty to get the fabric. Yes, in Mauritius, we're having a weaving plant, we have a spinning mills. I don't think in South Africa we're having weaving at this moment, etc. And with what will happen tomorrow with the continental free trade agreement, what is being discussed? Going to be more flexible, more rigid? Are we looking for more double transformation, and then the cotton also should wholly be obtained? So from Mauritius' perspective, we have made some efforts in order, you know, to address that. We have been able to attract, you know, and the mills here. We have a couple of spinning mills or even fabric manufacturer there, but we have been able to do a beautiful case study with one company that in fact came from Asia, from China, but set in Mauritius. They grow their cotton in Madagascar. You know very well Mauritius is having a strong link also in the development of the region, including Madagascar. But they process it in Mauritius and we export back to Africa principally. 80% goes to Africa, and amongst more to South Africa, and 20% are sold on the local market. You see, that the dynamism that we want to create, that ecosystem that we want to create, and that necessitate, you know, as a support from all parties, and in fact, the support of all parties will come when the vision is shared and the way of proceeding ahead, you know, we are all looking the same direction. Because I do feel that we are so rich in raw materials, means we are growing the cocoa here, but the best chocolate is still from Switzerland, you see? So it's time for the world of fashion, for the world of textile apparel, where we have been playing a prominent role together with a number of countries, South Africa and all, and now Kenya, now Ethiopia now, in order to see in the same direction, and in other words, to work shoulder to shoulder. And that's the way we can, you know, adhere to a common vision, a shared vision, implement and succeed in what I will call a dream of all forefathers of these countries, all founding fathers of these countries, people who have been, you know, dreaming of a strong Africa continent.
Felix, thank you. Huge identification of just how much potential the continent has. Narisha, I wonder if I can come over to you now and ask you to just share some of your experiences as you've looked at being an exporting person, and what exactly are both the challenges and opportunities that you find, especially being real as you've looked at exports in particular across the Africa.
Hi, thank you, Michael. So I'm Narisha from SAFLEC. And as you know, we are the Export Council mandated to promote the exports of South African footwear and leather industry. And we've also been mandated to do the same for the clothing and textile sector. I'd like to first start off with the capabilities that we currently have within South Africa itself. Although we have a small footwear and leather industry in comparison to the globe, we're largely much bigger than the rest of the footwear industry in Africa itself. We are capable. And the reason I say we are capable is because we have strong government support with obtaining machinery grants and PIP grants. And this in turn has helped our factories grow themselves and become globally competitive from a technology point of view. From a fashion and trend point of view, us as SAFLEC have attained the WGSN as well as the Asatoria Trend Seminars, which we bring to this industry to ensure that the industry is globally knowledgeable about 2 years in advance trends. Through our experience over the years, we realized that the local industry needed to understand and be equipped with the knowledge of how collections are put together for the global market. And the shortfall initially was understanding the trends of the global buyers. We have managed to fill that gap. And for the first time in history, South Africa had those elements brought in from a training perspective directly from Italy, which is Asatoria, a leading trend-setting agency specific to the footwear and leather industry. Over and above that, we understood that we didn't want just a European perspective. We also wanted an American perspective and the global perspective, and that is why we've recently also retained the software of WGSN, which all of our manufacturers have access to. Now, this helps them with understanding the global trends and forecasting 2 years in advance in order to be able to build their collection for an international buyer. So from that perspective, extremely capable. The other reason I call ourselves capable is because over the past few years, through the several types of training sessions that we have brought to the industry, we have equipped them in such a way that their mindsets have now started to change to moving into becoming leaders rather than followers in creating their footwear and leather collections. And I have several factories that have been so successful with that. And one of them is the Falcon, which has been manufactured by Hopewell Footwear, which has achieved international acclaim through having some sort of partnership with Ashton Kutcher and Mark Cuban, both from Hollywood. That specific brand has made it into 23 different countries, and there's a huge reason for that, and we'll discuss that part in a few minutes. The other one is that we've had brilliant Cape Cobra, which is our #1 handbag manufacturer in the country currently, and they have already in their lifespan managed to produce products for many Hollywood buyers and have made it into several countries. They've actually even manufactured for the likes of Michael Kors. So that's why I feel that we have that differentiation edge to become unique and create, very capable of creating unique and differentiated products. I personally believe that that is our way forward in the international market, to create very differentiated and very unique products that are, South African into the international market. And that has been very, very successful for us. Into the African continent, I still firmly believe the fact that we can go, just-in-time deliveries with same season, we can definitely, grow our exports into the African continent. Obviously, yes, we know there are challenges, but those challenges can be overcome. And one of those challenges currently is that with COVID, every single African country has decided to go into a buy local campaign to empower their industries because they know that these industries, which is the footwear and leather and clothing and textiles, are going to be able to increase employment. So they all are concentrating on growing their footwear, leather, clothing and textile industries within their countries itself. That becomes a bit of a challenge because attention now is being placed on growing that element within their country, and they become a bit, negative with accepting exports into that country. But we've overcome that barrier by offering a trade-off with knowledge sharing. So we trade off with knowledge sharing, and we've started doing trade-offs with raw materials. So if Kenya, for example, has good leather, we tell them, fine, bring your leather buys onto our virtual missions. We'll get our manufacturers and we'll link them up to you, and you can accept our footwear. So we've been working with those sort of trade-offs to see whether we can grow the industry in that respect. All in all, locally, from South Africa point of view, I must thank the retailers through the master plan intervention, because there's been a lot of buy-in to try and rescue our manufacturers during this time. And a lot of them have been supporting our manufacturers. If you walk into Mr. Price, you'll see a lot of made in SA products. So that is what I need to put forward from an export point of view. From a SAFLIC export mission point of view, I want to say we never stopped right through COVID. We pushed through. We were the first country and the first export council or association in the entire world that put together the first virtual trade mission. during COVID. So we never stopped. We went forward. We led this, and the fact that we led this means that we can lead many more things. You know, Rome wasn't built in a day. Whilst we maintain a positive momentum and encourage industry as well as retailers locally and internationally that South Africa is capable, I am very confident that we can overcome any challenge and grow from there with partners like Garish. Thank you, Michael.
Etienne, can I go on to you now? I've not left you last because you're a trade unionist. I have left you last because you and I have shared some very interesting experiences over the last 15 years as we've looked at the South African clothing and textile landscape, as we've looked together at a number of trade negotiations through the various entities we serve on together, some of which have been continental, many of which have been international. And I'm hoping that what you're going to do is touch on a number of the elements that have been spoken about by various speakers. But I also want to say to you, please don't let me be the one who only issues challenges here. I want you also to give me a sense of, for all of the players, some of whom are not represented here, but for all of the players who are here, including the retailers that I represent, what do you think should be brought to the party? Firstly, what are your thoughts about the comments? What are your thoughts about textiles in Africa? But then I'm hoping that what you're going to do is just start issuing very direct call-out challenges to all of us as to what we could and should be doing in order to bring some cohesion to the conversation that we're having here about making Africa just the better, wonderful, smarter place that we all have in Africa. Over to you, Esther.
Hi, Michael. Thank you very much. You know, I think it may be worth just taking a slight step back. If we consider the kind of 1990s and the 2000s and the unfettered globalization that you know we saw at that stage, things have changed a little bit. If you look at where we are currently in terms of global value chains, in terms of our industry, which is often at the kind of forefront of globalization, and I think there's a few factors. The first was the global economic crisis of the late 2000s, and then the kind of speed with which globalization was taking place kind of slowed down a little bit then. But what we then also saw is it became clear that globalization was not, or the benefits of it wasn't really shared throughout the population. There was a big part of the benefit went to a very small part of people, and with a lot of people not sharing in those benefits. That of course gave rise to populism, and that populism has meant an increase in trade barriers, so that further has slowed down globalization. But the other thing that we've seen recently is obviously the COVID-19 pandemic, which have caused many supply chains to stop or to be broken. And so we're really in what has been described now as an era of slowbalization instead of globalization, kind of a slowing down of this unfettered globalization that we saw a decade and 2 decades ago. I mention that because I want to link into the points made by Girish and by Narisha, is that this provides opportunities for us in South Africa, but also in the region and more broadly on the continent. It means that we can start to think it means that many supply chain people, many procurement people in retailers such as your members are thinking a bit differently about their sourcing. They're trying to diversify sourcing. They're trying to ensure that sourcing is not only come from one region in the world, and it provides some opportunities for manufacturers, for instance, in South Africa, to provide goods and to sell goods onto retailers, and in a way that they may not have done, may not have been possible 10 or 20 years ago. This is also helped by the fact that many retailers are now looking at replenishment programs to ensure that, you know, they have the right colored T-shirt on the shelf at the right time, at the right price. Whereas previously it was very much a dependence on kind of, you know, sourcing from afar, very much a focus on price. Now it's shifted a little bit and more of an emphasis, or somewhat more of an emphasis on availability and replenishment. That also, we believe, provides an opportunity for South African manufacturers and also manufacturers in the region. Of course, in South Africa, we have a much weaker currency. You know, in the 2000s, the rand was about 6 rand to the dollar. We're now at 15, 16 rand to the dollar, which also means that imports are more expensive. It means that local goods are more competitive towards those imports. And then we also see that many of the destinations, many of the origins where those imports came from, you know, are not as cheap as they used to be. If you look at the increases in wages in the last 5 or 10 years in many parts of China, then it means it's also become more expensive to import from there. And then finally, to link with the point that Girish made about, you know, the intra-African trade and the lack of intra-African trade and the opportunity that the AFCFTA now provides. So, you know, if you put all of these blocks together, you're building a house that looks different than what it did 10 or 20 years ago, and that suddenly starts to provide some opportunities for local manufacturing. We think there's another element, and specifically for us as a trade union, for us as a representative of clothing workers in the industry, you know, the other opportunity is that many retailers are now much more concerned about what do their supply chains look like in terms of employment conditions, in terms of wages. So for us in South Africa, we believe this is an opportunity to say, you know, relative to many other countries, we have a supply chain, we have an industry where people, where clothing workers have a representative union that negotiates wages at a central level, that sets minimum standards and employment conditions, and that this is a further opportunity provided by a country like ours to say that if you buy here, in general, you have a much better sense that your goods are not made, you know, in sweatshops, that you as a brand or as a retailer may not be embarrassed down the line, you know, when it comes out that your goods are made in those kinds of operations. So you know, for us, it's a very different industry than what we had previously, and one that provides, you know, several new opportunities.
Thanks, Etienne, and I'm hoping that we're just going to have opportunity now for reaction and just an open conversation from everyone, and I'll just be quite comfortable if we just wave hands at each other. Girish, I'm going to give you a chance to just say a few things. You and Vishnu went first, so I'm going to let the two of you just also give some opportunities to react to some of the thoughts that have been shared. Girish.
Yeah. Thanks, Michael. I'm just reacting on the points, arguments made by Etienne. Okay. In that constructive way that I look at things. Yes, things are changing. And one thing also must realize coming, if production exists, is because markets exist. It's the market that will push the production to what they should manufacture. And we are living with the with the COVID-19, okay? It implies that the way of doing business with more focus now from doing business in the terms of the demand of the market itself, and the demand of formal things are changing. The demands is the way we are doing business through digitalizations, the way that we are going now to show our samples, the way that we are going to connect with the clients, which has become more low volume, less stock, and very much differentiated in terms of the designs they are looking, more personalized design. These are changing also in the same goal of what we are looking to achieve with the regionalization that we are talking about. So in all this, I don't know, I shoot this question is with what happening with Asia, what Etienne just mentioned, the rising cost of their labor, the rising cost of their production, okay? From their perspective and the difficulties they have been facing, the trade tension that they are having. And the time seems, you know, when if you look in that particular vision, why is not that our continent could position itself, could prepare itself to position itself as a supplier to the world when it comes to the manufacturing of fashion. We are having the raw materials, we are having the exports, we know how to do the transformation. We now, with the advent of internet, we can connect so fast. So the way I want to look is for the next decade that are coming, how to position the region, the African continent, you know, on the global map when it comes to dressing and putting people in the world of fashions, giving each of them their own identity, and at a time where there's more and more concern also about, you know, a certain equity, sharing. Our business should not be tilted towards only one direction. And at the point also where there's more and more emphasis, a new word of the 90s gained a lot of popularity now, sustainability, more sustainability. And one thing more that's coming on also is with regard that everyone has the right to dress the way he wants to be, and all this in the perspective that we are taking also into consideration that we care for Mother Earth, you know. So it implies these exigencies of putting that we are going to have a new demands that will come up. A new demand would imply a new organization in our production and distribution, and in our quest, of course, to also at the end of the day, we say upliftment of the countries of the region. So this is what I wanted to react to the point that Etienne made, because I believe, honestly, is if there is this sort of constructive sharing, collaborations, and as we are closer now, we can definitely reach these higher objectives, translate the talking, make it a reality.
Thank you, Girish. Vishnu, I want to come to you and just ask you, to what extent does that complexity of systems and processes in fact actually make our lives more difficult? And what, from your perspective, could we be looking at doing to make things just work a lot better and a lot simpler, just for the systems to achieve some of those objectives that the likes of Narisha and Girish and Etienne are talking about?
Yeah, I think when Girish spoke specifically about the trade agreements earlier, it obviously touched certain points. You know, we have trade agreements that have been in place, and there are clear rules and regulations to these trade agreements. And sometimes I've questioned it personally, and as to whether these rules are being adhered to fully. Girish spoke about the double processing rule as an example, where yarn needs to be made into fabric to qualify for origin qualification, you know, and sometimes it's something that we cannot control. I think for the sake of maintaining business and keeping a flow of export from the country, there may be practices that aren't fully followed through with and aligning themselves to qualify for the origin criteria in place. I think we're going to go into an African free trade agreement, and I think before we do so, it's something that it needs to be discussed thoroughly, and the processes be aligned clearly throughout the entire spectrum. If something is practiced in one country, it needs to be done in a similar manner in the rest of the countries as well. So I think in sharing the expertise, that may make our practices a little better. You spoke about systems. I don't really think that on the electronic side of things, there are too many complexities, because most of the African countries are utilizing electronic systems that are aligned with each other. somehow they speak to each other. It's like within the SACU region, the customs union, we've implemented a system where UCR numbers speak to each other, and it's essential for that to actually trade within these countries. So there are efforts made to align systems in terms of processing through customs. I think Etienne also raised points about the landscape and how it's changed over the years. I've literally been able to watch how the import landscape has changed over the years from the 90s to 2000, 2020. And it was a much more controlled environment at some points without all of the complexities that you speak about now. There were simple elements that were utilized to control the imports then. As an example, for footwear, there used to be a requirement to have an ITAC permit in place. And the issuing of these ITAC permits were very controlled. They could be issued to people that were manufacturers that were supplementing their manufacturing. So the landscape obviously has changed over the years, but I hope that this plan sees a regeneration based on the commitment from the parties within the plan itself as well. There are elements that still linger, and I'm close to the customs part of checking whether imports are still undervalued and understanding those sort of campaigns. I am aware that it's being followed through, so the commitment from the entities like SARS is definitely there. There are certain elements that still need to be looked at, but it's definitely on the cards. So I think those sort of changes will definitely take us to a better space in the near future as well.
Etienne, I'm curious to know whether you think, given the ambitions that are expressed around the table here, do you think we will be able to reasonably achieve that ambition of 97% of no tariff product moving across the continent in what the AFTA says in 5 years' time? Do you see that happening? What are the obstacles? What are the opportunities there? Because I think we sometimes set very ambitious targets, but the question is, can we make it work?
Michael, I think the crucial part of it is that we need to ensure that we build consumer markets in many more African countries. So, while in some of the major African countries, major African economies like South Africa and Egypt and Nigeria and Kenya and so on, those consumer markets are there. The more economic growth we can get into some of the other countries, the more demand there will be in those countries, the more products will be moving across the continent. So that is a crucial part of it, to just think about those aims, but without thinking, why would something, move from South Africa to Rwanda? Why would something move from South Africa to Sierra Leone? I mean, it would be, when there's demand built up in those countries. So that would, of course, be the first crucial part. And, as a trade union with many other African trade unions, we regularly talk about the industrialization of Africa. That is a crucial part of it. We cannot just move from the economies that we have now to very service-orientated economies. In order to ensure sufficient economic development here, we need to build industry, and in that way, develop the economies, but also people into formal employment. But there is an important other part to this, and this is something that Vishnu has mentioned as well, and that is the issue of customs fraud. In South Africa for 2 decades, it's been a major problem. It's stopped us from reaching our potential in terms of employment in the clothing and textile, footwear and leather industries. It resulted in many local factories closing. So, Michael, for us, what we've seen and what we think is required is for the local customs authority to start being better, but also to start being smarter, to be able to identify problems, to be able to move in and stop those containers where goods are being imported illegally, to identify those companies that may be part of such actions. So we think there's a responsibility on the customs authority, but similarly, there's a responsibility, Michael, on the retailers, your members in this case. Vishnu, there's a responsibility on the importing and agents and the freight forwarders to ask, well, you know, is there a chance that what currently is being imported in my name, you know, could be under invoiced? You know, we've seen examples in court cases recently in South Africa where the goods are coming in are valued at 10 American cents for a garment and 15 American cents for a garment. Now, I mean, there's no way you can probably buy the buttons on that shirt or on that jacket for that price. So the level of cheating is significant, and we think that as soon as freight forwarders and import agents and retailers start to look at those invoices and say, but you know, is this even possible that I can get goods at these kinds of prices? So for us, you know, that's something that we would also move to our partners in this and say, it's not just about achieving trade, but also making sure that it's fair trade.
Thanks, Etienne. Narisha, I'm going to just hand over to you to respond to some of the conversation. And then, folk, I'm just going to ask everyone to just start preparing a few sentences of your final words, please, as we go through this. Narisha, over to you.
Thank you, Michael. Michael, I think it's very important, you know, when we get into such conversations to understand what is happening globally. We can't ignore the fact that the entire global industry has been affected by COVID. It has, whether we like it or not. It has just changed the entire ball game. And to give you an idea of this actual landscape that's going on, I'm going to give you a retailer point of view first. Globally, we've been, you know, for over the past few weeks, I've been in constant contact with the World Footwear Organization and Retailers Organization, and we have weekly, sometimes 2 weekly meetings, just basically to understand what's happening in different countries and what their challenges are. And one of the most or main challenges were, from a buying perspective, the buying season kept on being pushed back and back and back. And retailers are also talking about, the international retailers are talking about moving more into all season buying. This is the way the retail industry worldwide is going, and they seem to be changing their mindsets into all season buying. When we look at the brick and mortar sales, they've dropped drastically internationally, and e-commerce has really taken off. It's taken off better than anybody ever expected. In fact, it's increased in some countries over 200%. We need to be cognizant of this fact. And as SAFLEC, we were very cognizant of this fact, and we immediately moved into virtual platforms. And we are pushing all of our manufacturers and designers to get onto social media platforms to push their products, because it's very important. Through these social media platforms, influencers can be used to change buyer mindsets as well as consumer mindsets. Very, very important factor. I also like to reiterate Etienne's very, very good and wonderful statement in saying that we really, as South Africa, have a very good strong point when we're going out there and we're promoting our the sales of South African product. And one of the very important points that he's mentioned is a sales point, and that I use constantly, is the fact that we have a controlled labor wage. We've got bodies that control the wages, ensure that we do not have underage people working, that the workers are being looked after. In fact, I actually have another country trade organization coming down next week, and I've got them to meet our bargaining council so they can see that the bargaining council is there, to regulate these things, and that we look after our manufacturers through sick funds and pension funds, and that there's unions that ensure that our workers are looked after with a decent wage. That's an extremely strong sell point from a South African point of view. Low-hanging fruit has always been our southern region manufacturers have bigger presence. When we move into the rest of Africa, let's not forget, we're saying that, you know, I know Etienne mentioned that they could be two-way trade. We also gone through COVID. They also want to increase the employment within their region. They've also identified that the clothing and textile and footwear and leather industry is a sector that could increase employment. And we need to be cognizant of these facts when we're planning forward. From a logistics point of view, we need to be timeous. I think we need to have a speed of resolution with the delays that have been occurring at the borders. These are all barriers to entry, the delays at the borders, the delays at the port due to the fact that all of the machinery to lift on and lift off containers are not being used because of maintenance issues. I really feel that those things need speed to resolution, because some of the shipping lines are really getting upset with the fact that all containers are not being offloaded and export containers are being short shipped because of the time frame that they have to offload and reload. So that's a huge element that needs to be rectified. We can do everything we want to increase exports, but if we're not getting the logistics side, sorted out, so we're going to have these barriers. So that would be, again, the border delays, all right, shipping rates, and port problems. These need to be resolved, and it needs to be resolved as fast as we possibly can, because all the efforts we are making will just fall to the wayside if it's not. From an export enhancement point of view, I mentioned earlier, it's been great. We've had two-way trade negotiations where we're trading off with the African countries to see what can we take from them and what can we give them. And that seems to be working right now. And ideally, I'm very optimistic and I'm very confident that if we continue pushing the consumer buying behavior and the retail buying behavior, we will make headway. Etienne just mentioned now that we need to get buyers, or basically build our buyer base in other countries. The most effective way to do that is the big M. And the big M is marketing, 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 marketing. Digitally marketing, TV marketing, radio marketing. Buyers' mindset and buyers' behavior is what we can drive through these, through these various channels. And I feel it's very important that we get all of the manufacturers within the clothing and textile sector, the designers, as well as the footwear and leather sector. We've got to get them up to par where they have decent websites, globally competitive websites. They're all on social media. They have proper promotional videos. They have proper catalogs, not just a catalog that's issued, proper spring, summer, autumn, winter catalogs, and a profile about how they run. This is actually the foundation of any company. It's something that they should have before they even start business, because you're promoting what you have, brings the sales, brings the revenue, grows the export, and grows the company itself to create more employment. It's just a chain of events, Michael, and I'm firm about these beliefs of the marketing side in order to gain more consumer buy-in and retailer buyer buy-in.
Thanks, Narisha, and thank you for those closing comments. Etienne, and then Girish and Vishnu, in that order, please. Etienne, your closing comments.
I think where an opportunity currently lies for us is in the area of medical textiles and PPE. So what we've been able to do in South Africa during the pandemic is really build up the supply of locally made respirators, surgical masks, surgical and isolation gowns and aprons. And we've realized that this is a capability that's existed there, but it's not really ever been supported in a useful way. And so during the pandemic, we've able to supply a lot of the medical textiles that were needed and the PPE that were needed to in hospitals from local sources. We also in South Africa have a lot of non-woven textile producers. So a lot of the fabrics that we use to make these products were actually sourced locally. So it's not just the final supply, but quite a good value chain. So we think it's this is an opportunity for us. This is an opportunity, you know, while the pandemic is still around, but may well be in future, because we think that coming out of this pandemic, things may look quite a bit different in terms of how we deal with the potential of future pandemics and future health scares. So we think this is an opportunity and a chance to export to other African countries, but also to the rest of the world. We have a good quality standard system that will also assist us when marketing these kinds of products outside South Africa.
Thank you, Etienne. Gerish, I'm looking forward to hearing from you, your final thoughts on that.
Well, the way I want to look to it is in this way. Following the challenges that we have with the pandemic, following the different challenges we are having, the way economic is being shifted, economic power is being shifted, I would say that we are living in a world where change is constant. There's nothing. Change will always happen. The only thing that we cannot change is change itself. And in that spirit of our ambitions, I believe you asked a question whether we can achieve or what the yardstick in the forecast we're having. And I believe that we should aim for the sky, or at least we'll reach for the stars. And taking into consideration within the 54, 55 countries in Africa, the different change in habits, the different way of our behavior, the emergence of smart cities and of the middle class that will create that consumer base that Etienne is talking, and the way the world is connected, the younger generation of Y, the new generation coming, the way they are connected to the whole world at the click of the laptop, and the type of product that they will be looking for. And I'm talking, you know, from the perspective of technical textile, the type of fabric, the type of dress we want to dress ourselves, the protection we want to have, which go beyond or the demand from the paramedicals, go to the demand up to even being used, you know, in day-to-day life, and not only in perspective of medicals. And if our leaders is having this well in their mind of substituting our imports of manufacturing goods, which is, I believe, goes in line with that vision of intra-African trade. And like McKinsey in one report put it, that there is a demand of $100 billion that could be added to Africa overall manufacturing output of apparel and other commodities. So all this makes sense, and for me to achieve this, we need, you know, to probably also reinvent our manufacturing competitiveness that exists within our different manufacturing units, and also have a look among a number of dimensions, which I believe is important. And one you mentioned about the tariff, about the way we are manufacturing it, whether to what extent we can adopt more technology, and when we now know the latest development of soft robotics, what they are doing, etc. And all this to be able, you know, to be ready to position ourselves on the global market and satisfy the demand and exigencies of customers. Of course, we have to build from where we are already and be ambitious in our vision for the next, not decades, 2-3 decades, where we want to be in 2050, where we want Africa to be in 2050. And believe me, 1 decade is already a long time in for a transformation that we wish to happen. And I believe we have the necessary talents in the continent to achieve it. I think we have to see in that particular vision, that vision. And the last example we have seen have Rwanda showed the world they can transform themselves, you know, in matter of less than a decade. And why we can't have such ambitions in positioning ourselves.
Thank you, Girish. Vishnu, I'm going to hand over to you. You're getting the last few words of the panel.
No, thank you very much. I'm just going to react to some of the points that were mentioned. I think Narisha spoke about logistics and port delays. Obviously, it's something that has been a lingering issue for a while now. It lies obviously within the package of Transnet and the state, and it's something that we need to push to correct as well. I think it's obvious that we need a better supply chain on the sea freight. On the air freight side of things as well, I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned from airlines like Ethiopian Airlines, who were able to adapt and change during this pandemic. And unfortunately, we don't have our local carriers that would support our supply chain just yet. But there's lessons to be learned of how air freight needs to adapt and change over the years. I think Etienne spoke about PPE, and that was an interesting subject because during the pandemic, it was the flavor, you know, everyone wanted to get into doing masks and doing PPE. And I guess the important points that we need to remember about PPE was that on the international supply side of things, there were countries that were looking for South African PPE. And I don't think that word was spread wide enough in terms of getting that sort of manufacturers to put themselves into that space. So hinging on that as well, I think Narisha spoke about development. And I think development is essential because there's a lot of skill in this conversation as well as we talk about it. And if manufacturers kind of align themselves with each other and share their skills willingly, I think we can take ourselves to a better space as well. Even on the manufacturing side of things, I think what the future should hold is like super factories where manufacturers are allowed to bring themselves together, learn the necessary skills, be exposed to the IT benefits, to get themselves also into e-commerce platforms, and kind of share more than we're doing right now. I think skills need to be transferred within the industry itself to help it grow, and I hope to see that in time as well.
Thank you very much, and thank you to everyone for a really interesting conversation space. There's always going to be more to talk about, but Africa is a place of potential always. And as long as we recognize that, which means that for the next few decades, there are going to be huge opportunities. Thank you all. Neil, over to you. Cheers.
Thank you very much to everybody who was part of the panel, and to you, Michael, for keeping it flowing so nicely to getting the discussion going. I think there was a lot of food for thought in there. And so just a big thank you to Vishnu, Etienne, Narisha, Girish. We're very, very grateful for your time. And what a great start to the virtual All-Fashion Sourcing 2020 event. Thanks once again, and we'll see you on our next session.